The system that failed her. How one woman's fight became a blueprint for justice. Have you ever wondered what happens when the systems we're taught to trust become the very instruments of our oppression? When following the rules doesn't protect you, but instead makes you vulnerable to those with power. When justice isn't just blind, but seems deliberately turned against you. I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Stefannie Dyson, a woman whose story will fundamentally challenge everything you believe about justice, resilience, and true empowerment. Stefannie isn't just a survivor of injustice. She is a revolutionary force who has transformed unimaginable trauma into a mission that's creating ripples of change across communities nationwide. Stefannie's story begins where many of our nightmares do. As a Black woman, a devoted mother, and a respected professional, she had built her life doing everything right. She followed society's playbook for success and security. Yet, in a devastating turn of events, she found herself framed by the very government officials sworn to uphold justice, forcibly separated from her beloved children and subjected to over 3 years of unlawful incarceration. Let that sink in for a moment. 3 years, stolen based on fabricated charges. But what makes Stephanie's journey so profoundly powerful isn't just what happened to her, it's what she did about it. When confronted with false charges and a system designed to crush her, Stefannie didn't merely hire legal representation. She became her own advocate. She immersed herself in legal studies so thoroughly, so completely, that she successfully represented herself in court and won against the very system that had attempted to destroy her life. She won against a system that was never built to serve her. This is the moment where most stories would end, with freedom regained and justice, however delayed, finally served. But for Stefannie, this was just the beginning. Instead of retreating into the safety of her restored liberty, she transformed her pain into purpose. Today, she dedicates her life to teaching others, particularly those from marginalized communities, how to understand their rights and defend themselves against systemic injustice. This is the radical heart of what I want to explore with you today. The counterintuitive truth that genuine freedom doesn't come from blindly trusting systems, but from understanding them deeply enough to navigate, challenge, and transform them when necessary. From my profound conversation with Stefannie, three life altering insights emerge that can revolutionize how we think about empowerment in the face of injustice. First, knowing your rights is meaningless if you don't know how to use them. We often treat rights as abstract concepts, noble words on aging parchment. But Stephanie's experience reveals that rights are tools. And like any tools, their power lies not in their existence, but in how skillfully you wield them. The Constitution won't protect you if you don't know how to invoke its protections when facing a judge who'd rather process you than hear you. Second, spiritual strength forms the foundation of true resilience. When facing extreme adversity, legal knowledge alone isn't enough. The inner resources that sustain us through our darkest moments, whether faith, meditation, or other spiritual practices, aren't luxuries, but essential components of survival and transformation. Stefannie's spiritual elevation was crucial in sustaining her through trauma, loss, and ongoing battles with corruption. And third, perhaps most powerfully, our greatest healing often comes when we help others heal. By teaching what she's learned, Stefannie hasn't just recovered from her trauma, she's transformed it into a legacy of community empowerment that will outlive her. The fight doesn't end when your personal battle is won. Real transformation happens when you help others rise above similar challenges. Now, you might be thinking, this is an exceptional case. Most of us won't face such extreme injustice. And statistically, you might be right. But Stefannie's experience isn't as isolated as we might wish to believe. Consider the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs. This organization represents Black financial leaders who face persistent barriers while driving economic development in their communities. These leaders encounter chronic underinvestment in Black led organizations and institutional obstacles limiting access to capital, even when their qualifications match or exceed those of their white counterparts. Their response mirrors Stefannie's individual fight. Through advocacy for equitable capital redistribution, research driven policy work, and capacity building programs, they've increased fiscal capacity among their members and strengthened community impact. They've influenced public policy on equitable banking practices and created vital educational resources for entrepreneurs. This collective resistance against systemic oppression demonstrates that understanding how systems work, whether legal or financial, is the first step toward changing them. Or look at the community led financial literacy initiatives emerging across the country. These programs address a critical gap: the lack of culturally relevant financial education for African Americans, which has historically been a significant barrier for aspiring business owners. The data is stark. Studies show that most families lack even $400 in emergency savings. But these initiatives are changing that reality through comprehensive educational workshops on budgeting, investing, and entrepreneurship tailored specifically for Black audiences. The results speak volumes: improved financial decision making abilities, greater representation within finance sectors, and increased rates of business ownership and successful entrepreneurship. This work underscores Stefannie's mission: empowering people through knowledge so they can defend themselves economically as well as legally. Research on racial inequality among small business owners during COVID 19 reveals persistent disparities between Black owned startups and white owned ones regarding access to capital, even when creditworthiness matches or exceeds peers' levels. Many qualified entrepreneurs don't even apply for loans out of fear they'll be denied regardless, a psychological barrier born from repeated injustice. But here too, we see how advocacy and education create change. Data driven initiatives highlighting these inequities have led some local banks and development agencies toward more inclusive lending policies. These efforts have shifted the narrative around what credit worthiness means, helping dismantle harmful stereotypes about who deserves opportunity. What ties all these stories together? Stefannie's personal journey and these broader systemic challenges is a fundamental truth that challenges conventional wisdom. The systems we're taught to trust don't always deserve that trust. And when they fail us, our greatest protection isn't blind faith in authority, but knowledge, community, and the courage to stand up for ourselves and others. This brings me to the heart of what I learned from Stefannie. The revolution she embodies isn't about tearing everything down, it's about building something better, starting with ourselves. For Black women, especially, who have long carried the strong Black woman burden, who've been expected to endure, to overcome, to carry on regardless of the cost, this message is revolutionary. It says your strength isn't measured by how much you can endure in silence. Your strength is in knowing when and how to speak up. when to set boundaries, when to demand better. When Stefannie represented herself in court, she wasn't just fighting for her freedom, she was reclaiming her voice in a system designed to silence her. When she now teaches others their rights, she's not just sharing legal knowledge, she's creating a community of empowered individuals who understand that true power comes from knowledge applied with conviction. So, what does this mean for you? What step can you take today toward this kind of empowered existence? It starts with a simple but profound shift from seeing yourself as a passive recipient of justice to an active participant in creating it. Maybe that means learning more about your legal rights, not just in theory, but in practice. Maybe it means supporting organizations that provide legal education to marginalized communities. Maybe it means examining where you might have placed blind trust in systems that deserve scrutiny. Or perhaps it means embracing the spiritual practices that will sustain you through challenges, building the inner strength that no external force can diminish. The systems that govern our lives, legal, financial, educational, healthcare, were not designed with everyone in mind. They were built by the powerful for the powerful. But here's the revolutionary truth: these systems can be understood, they can be navigated, they can be changed. And it starts with one person refusing to be a victim, refusing to be silenced, refusing to accept injustice as inevitable. I challenge you today: look at the systems that shape your life. Where have you accepted limitations that aren't truly yours? Where have you surrendered your power because you didn't know you had it? Where might you need to become your own advocate? What would happen if every one of us truly understood our power? Not just what we're allowed under the law or society's expectations, but what we could actually achieve if we learned how systems work and committed ourselves fully to justice? Stefannie Dyson didn't just survive a system that tried to destroy her, she mastered it, overcame it, and is now teaching others to do the same. Her story isn't just inspiring, it's instructive. It shows us that even in our most vulnerable moments, we carry within us the seeds of our own liberation. The question isn't whether you have the power, the question is, what will you do with it? Will you remain comfortable in ignorance, hoping systems will protect you? Or will you arm yourself with knowledge, surround yourself with community, and stand ready to fight not just for yourself, but for others who may not yet have found their voice? The choice is yours. But remember, justice isn't something that happens to you, it's something you create through knowledge, through action, through courage. What step will you take today toward learning your rights or helping someone else claim theirs? Because in that step, however small, lies the beginning of a revolution.